All right, Najma. Well, welcome to the Unfiltered Healing Podcast. We are so excited to have you on today.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm really, really happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. I'm excited for today because number one, you just have like the most relaxing voice. And I love you have your own podcast, which we'll talk about later.
Mm.
And you just have such a peaceful voice to you. So I know that people will gain peace just listening to our conversation today. And, today we're going to talk a lot about positivity, which is one of your expertises. And so, why don't you give our audience a little bit of history about yourself? Have you always kind of been a positive person? Is this something that you developed into? Or what's a little bit of the background about yourself?
Okay, so I've got a psychology degree and I've got a master's in coaching psychology and positive psychology. So that's where the positive stuff come into it. But actually, to be honest, even before then, I was very interested in personal development. For years and years, I was really interested in personal development. And I used to go to seminars and read books and just go to talks and things. And there was a lot there about positivity and just sort of being more on the positive side of life, like leading life and the benefits of it, and how
Mhm.
that can help in all different areas of life. And actually, when you mentioned the voice, that's interesting because I'm a Christian, but before I was a Christian, I was working as a hypnotherapist, and where the voice
Mhm.
really comes into it, because when you see clients, you kind of have to almost put on this soothing voice when you're doing the actual hypnosis part with them. And but since I became a Christian, I feel like it doesn't really go with my faith, so I stopped doing that soon after I became a Christian. But yeah, so that might be where the voice thing comes from. But having studied positive psychology and done sort of research in that area, I've also actually found there's lots of there's lots of things in positive psychology that goes with my faith personally. That there's lots of stuff that you see in there that I feel probably stems from the Bible without them necessarily knowing it does. But yeah, positive psychology I really, really enjoyed. I mean, that's why I went down that route because most of psychology, it sort of maybe focuses on mental illness and what to do with different sort of bad things that happen in life and the things that can go wrong. Whereas positive psychology focuses on sort of going even beyond just being at sort of what you might call baseline okay. It sort of goes towards like flourishing, and it looks at
Mhm.
what goes right in life and tries to learn from that.
Yeah, absolutely. So many people can get stuck in that. They get stuck in that cycle
Yeah.
where it's hard to even get into the positivity of their situation or maybe their family or things of that nature. Now, did you personally
Mm.
have an experience where this sparked for you, or was it just an interest, or did you have a personal like testimony or client or something to that nature where you started to dig deep into positivity?
Um, Actually, when I was studying it, because I studied a module of this in when I was doing my undergraduate psychology degree, so you get a bit of taste of it because you just do like one semester of it, and it was just
Mhm,
I just really liked it a lot. It really appealed to me, the things that they were talking about. Just those classes were so different to other classes because they were looking at personal development as well, and they were always giving us things to do that we could actually practically do. So it wasn't just like sitting in a lecture. We were actually applying the things that we were learning in the lecture, like doing little exercises and encouraged to do them at home. And that was part of like what we did for our coursework and sort of the essays that we did that were marked. It was all very practical based, that we were asked to use the methods and the interventions on ourselves and then write about our experiences. So
mhm,
it was just such an interesting and just amazing module. And also I found that these things can be used even if someone is having mental health problems. It isn't just about sort of, maybe curing the mental illness, they can use these positive psychology interventions to just even feel better on a day-to-day basis. Like, even if someone's struggling with mental health problems, they can still use this and it can still help them a bit. And I just all the things I learned about how even daily stresses, even like even if someone doesn't have mental health problems, like, the
Mhm.
day-to-day stresses, people might, so many people have like stressful lives because they're so busy or they're too busy and rushing around. And it does have, accumulative effects on their health, on a
Mhm.
long-term basis. And actually applying some of these positive psychology techniques can sort of help to counter some of the effects and bring
Mhm.
people's sort of inner systems back to balance, just bring their mental health and their physical health sort of back to balance a bit because it can buffer like the bad things that can happen in life. And that's why I just think the things that I learned in positive psychology, when applied, I think they can just help anyone's life and just help even on a day-to-day basis and just, yeah, just make things just that little bit better.
Yes, we live in an epidemic of worry, you know? So
Yeah.
uh, it's so beneficial to everyone, like you said. Yes, absolutely, if you struggle from mental health challenges, but also just like what I see in my practice with chronic pain or anything that limits you,
Mm,
you get into those stuck patterns where positivity tends to dwindle and hope tends to
mm,
dwindle before I reach my office, you know what I mean? So,
mm,
yeah, it can affect so many different aspects of your life. So, let's get into a little bit about what are some of those strategies, excuse me, that you
mm.
implement in your life and your clients and your practice that have been successful for you for some people to start switching out of that phase themselves.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I particularly been getting into is this thing of gratitude. And I feel like you seem to hear about gratitude a bit more these days. You feel like, 'cause I mean, people that I've been following on social media, so many of them that talk about gratitude and practicing gratitude, and they're not necessarily people in like the health and wellness industry, or not, they're not in fact, none of them are psychologists. There's
Mhm,
people that have been writing about how they practice gratitude. I think even Oprah Winfrey said she has a gratitude journal or she does gratitude journaling every day. So it's kind of almost like mainstream now. But that's something that
mhm,
I've particularly focused on for the last few years actually. Just sort of I've sort of trained myself into sort of almost, when people talk about have an attitude of gratitude, and I've
yeah,
almost been training myself to go that way. I don't know if I necessarily sort of always have an attitude of gratitude, but one of the things I do is when I go to bed, as I'm drifting off to sleep, I think about what I'm grateful for that day. And I've just found that to be the most pleasant way to drift off to sleep. It's just, thinking about this and saying, "Oh, thank you for this, God," and or "I'm so grateful this happened and that happened." And I've really sort of found that, I'm drifting off to sleep in this really like positive mood. Whereas maybe I think recently, and well, not recently, just these days, I think a lot of people are having sleep issues, and because they're maybe worrying about things, either finances or health or whatever, the children, whatever's going on, and people tend to just think about those things in bed and it stops them from sleeping. Whereas,
mhm,
even if that's going on, if you're thinking about them while you're in bed, I'm not saying it's easy to switch off. I know these things are easier said than done. But if you're thinking
mhm,
about these things as you're in bed, you can't really do anything about them anyway. And whereas if you really think, well, look, I know I've got this financial problem, but it's bedtime now, and I can't really help my financial problem just by lying in bed thinking about it. And I would be better off if I have a decent night's sleep, because that might
mhm,
enable me to be able to think carefully the next day and concentrate and think better anyway, and maybe I will be able to come up with some solution the next day if I've had a good night's sleep. And, it's nice to just focus on, well, what are the good things in my life? It's not all doom and gloom. It can't be 100% doom and gloom. So I do have some good things in my life, and let me think about those, and what am I really genuinely grateful for that I do have? And I would think, that's something that I think people could try, and they might find that they're benefiting from it. They might find that their sleep is getting better if they do things like that. For example, that's just the one thing that I do, that I particularly do it at bedtime. So I thought I'd mention that one because I know that I have noticed that, not that I was one of these people that focused on things I'm worried about before bed, but I just sort of went to bed and whatever. I didn't really think about what I was thinking about before going to bed. But when I deliberately decided to focus on things that I'm grateful for, I did notice it was, how do I explain it? Like a sweeter sleep. It was really nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like an intentional, act of taking a
Mm,
hold of your thoughts, right? It's like I'm
mm,
intentionally being grateful for things, which is
yeah.
different than, not intentionally because you're starting to switch some of those patterns. Is Would you say that, um gratitude is like the number one thing that you find begins to turn that dial for people with worry? Like, is that kind of the first thing that you start working on with people?
I think gratitude is one of the sort of number one things that would help in many areas where something negative is happening, because when you're thinking about what you're grateful for, when you're sort of intentionally thinking, well, what is going good in my life, or what
Mhm,
am I grateful for? Just switching your focus to something that's so different to what you're worried about, or what you think is going badly in your life. It's just such a different switch that it does actually change things for people. And also there's been loads of studies done on the health benefits of gratitude, like psychological health and also
mhm,
physical health. And it was quite
mhm,
amazing, some of the things that I found, especially with the physical health. I personally, I was like quite amazed with some of the things that have been found. Like, for example, it, they did an experiment with people keeping a gratitude journal, people with blood pressure. They checked blood pressure, and they found that
mm.
blood pressure was lower. Like where the people were keeping the gratitude journals, it was 10 to 15% lower, which
Wow.
I thought was quite amazing. That was one thing I found amazing. And there was another one which they said in the research they found that it improved sleep, which, I can say from experience it definitely does. And they found
Mhm.
done research on people with for their heart health, and they found improvements there. They even found an improvement where with inflammation, it's brought inflammation down. People that were asked to maybe for a couple of weeks or 4 weeks to do some sort of a gratitude intervention, either keeping a journal every day, or there was one particular exercise where people at the end of the day thought of three good things that had happened. There's like
Mhm.
these kind of interventions that people are asked to do, and they found people with certain heart conditions, they when they tried this, they found that the group that tried this really benefited and recovered more quickly from heart health issues. And there was also, well, the what I mentioned before, like buffering people from stress and also depression as well, which makes sense really, because if you think depression, when you're feeling depression, whereas if you're focusing on the good things or what you are grateful for, it kind of almost like makes total sense that that's going to help.
Totally. Well, if we think about just even the physiology of what happens with stress and worry,
Mm,
um, one of the main hormones that gets released is cortisol, which is our stress hormone,
mm,
and that
yeah.
is super inflammatory. So when you think
Mm,
about someone with constantly chronic toxic thoughts and their cortisol is being pumped out all of the time, then it makes sense
Yeah,
if you begin to shift that cycle, your cortisol is
yeah,
going to begin to balance, and then a lot of inflammatory conditions are going to start decreasing, right? Because you're changing the thoughts. Um,
yeah.
can you speak to anything about as far as how powerful thoughts are, like in any part of your studies or in your education, how much of obviously we're talking about gratitude and the research there, but can you speak to anything about, like, how powerful, as far as we know the physiology that you just mentioned, thoughts can be in essence to someone's health? Because I know that you're a health, um, psychologist as well, and so thoughts, are sometimes, like, in my practice, one of the hardest things for people to overcome. Like, they can do other
Yeah,
things, but, like, their thought patterns are very ingrained. Um,
yeah.
so can you speak to just, like, the power of that and what you found in your education and practice?
Yeah, I just wanted to say just before that, when 'cause you mentioned about cortisol, there's one thing I forgot to mention was that gratitude increases dopamine. So
Mm,
that obviously will affect depression and other things, because that's another thing that's been found in the studies. But it's either even when they're either expressing their gratitude or even when they're receiving it, dopamine gets
mhm,
released.
mhm,
So it's
mhm.
good for the person receiving gratitude as well as the one giving it. And
That's phenomenal.
as far as thoughts, yeah, it is really good. And as far as thoughts are concerned, I mean, I haven't done a huge amount of research in that area, so I know all about. I've read. Have you? I don't know whether you've read Dr. Caroline Leaf's book. I don't know if you know
Yeah,
Dr.
I've
Caroline
read
Leaf.
some. Mhm. She's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, and I read her first book, "Who Switched Off My Brain," where she talks about toxic thoughts and the effect that can have on like your entire body. And
Mhm,
although I personally haven't researched, like, the opposite of that and how that can work on your body, I almost feel like, well, if toxic thoughts are having such damaging effects on your body, then the opposite is bound to have the opposite effect on your body. Just having the more positive thoughts, or, really focusing on what you are grateful for and what is good in your life, it's bound to
mhm,
have, like, really the more wonderful effects on your body. It kind of makes sense, even if I personally haven't looked into it. But now that we're talking about it, I think that's probably one of the first things I'm going to do tomorrow. Just be like, yeah, I'm going to start the actual studies
Yeah, I mean, you just
of what.
hear it a lot, like, especially in the psychology world, how powerful thoughts are, negative or positive, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and, like, I know in my profession, they don't talk about that. Like, they talk about the basis of our profession, things can happen if thoughts are toxic, but they don't really, like, go into much more than that.
mm,
So I know on my end, like, to help benefit my patients, God has really helped me to navigate that part that I needed more education and help with because, like, 90% of people have an emotional tie to that chronic condition. Um,
mm,
and so, I see the power of thoughts preliminary and breaking off some of those patterns as well. But I think in the traditional
mm,
medical system, there's, this thing of, oh, you're stressed, um,
mm,
just go meditate, just go do this. And for some people, that's really hard for them to do, or it's not
mm,
as much guidance for them to say, oh yeah, I'm definitely stressed. Okay, I'm just gonna do that. That's not really like the best advice, in my opinion, because these people can't
mm,
unswitch their brain. So,
yeah,
for the clients that you serve, um, and maybe gratitude is the key, like you explained, to be able to start unswitch that for you. But do you find, first of all, do you find that? And second of all, do you have, like, other tricks or other tips for people to start to begin to be in tune with that a little bit than just to say, "Oh, go meditate, go exercise, go do this." Do you have anything, that you particularly have success with? And maybe, like I said, it's gratitude or anything else that could help start to switch that for someone.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, different people are going to sort of find different things work for them. So yeah, like exercising has really good effects on the mind and the
Mm,
body. There's a study about how there was a study where they looked at people with depression, and one group had just medication, another group had exercising and medication, and another group, I think, just had exercising. They basically found that the people that were exercising, they had better results than the people on
mhm,
medication. And
mhm,
even, like, months later, they still were having the good results. So they were kind of alluding towards the idea that exercise can be just as good treatment for certain types of depression than medication. Which, like, sounds so much better than having to, pop these pills, and then these pills which are addictive and you have to wean yourself off them, you can't just come off them just like that, and what's in them. I mean, at the end of the day, drugs are toxic because 'cause they're made with chemicals and they're, synthetic, and, it's ideal to not have to take drugs if you can avoid it. And if
mhm,
exercise can do a just as good a job, it is better to do that. And yeah, some people, physical exercise is what they really need to unwind and to relax. With other people, it is just more what they do with their thoughts, i.e., looking at three good things every day, or just focusing more on the positives and gratitudes. And and for other people, it can be other things, like even just sort of the types of music that they might listen to. There's some stuff about listening to classical music that can help with anxiety, it can lower
mhm,
anxiety. Just listen to classical music, just the tunes, the soothing tunes. So
mhm.
there's all different things. It really, I think people would find what suits them, but they've got a choice of either sort of doing, like, mind exercises, or listening to music, or actually doing physical exercise, or maybe even a mixture. I mean, all these things are good for you anyway. You could, like, exercising is good for
Right,
your mind and body, just keeping you fit and healthy anyway, as well as being good for your mental health. And so people can use the combination. They can just, some people might just exercise every day, and they might decide to listen to classical music once or twice a week, or, whenever they have time, and just focus on thoughts and training themselves to maybe focus more on the positives that happen, because sometimes we've actually trained ourselves to focus on the negative, perhaps, because
yeah,
something bad might have happened and you're focusing on that, and then years later you're still ruminating on the past bad thing, instead of looking at what actually were positives. Or, sometimes people can think about a memory of, their life a few years ago, and they might be just focusing on the bad things that happened, and, like, completely ignoring the good things that happened. And sometimes you have to
mhm,
be really intentional. Sometimes you might even have to, at the beginning, force yourself to actually
yeah,
say, "Hang on, you know, things aren't 100% bad, this was good, that was good, this is good." And then you train yourself, and you get used to that. And that can
yeah,
then you just naturally start doing that.
yeah, you have to train yourself to be optimistic in a pessimistic world.
Yeah,
Right, it's like, you
yeah,
have your own
standing
life
up.
experiences. What were you saying?
Yeah. I said it's like standing out from the crowd, being optimistic
Yeah,
in a pessimistic world. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even I mean, it's definitely your own personal experiences too, but then it's definitely that holistic approach, what you listen to, what you watch, who you surround yourself with. Because if you turn on the
Mm,
news or if you turn on anything else, that's gonna feed into, more of that negative versus the positive.
mm,
And so people have to take account
mm,
of how much am I actually feeding in the positive versus the negative, right?
mm,
Because that's gonna
mm.
outlay really where your thoughts are coming from, and just to listen to your thoughts. A lot of people don't even listen, know how toxic they are.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh But, where was I going with that? So, one of the things that actually you wrote about is because even the past, couple years getting into that kind of pessimism or like this is the new normal or I think things are going to be this way. One of the things that I love that you actually wrote in one of your blog is you said that nothing is permanent, only change is permanent.
Mm,
I loved that when you said that, because I think it's very helpful for listeners to understand when we talk about positivity and things of that nature, when we talk about becoming so intertwined in your condition or your situation, you do have to know that nothing is permanent. But
mhm.
it can seem that
Yeah,
so I loved that you spoke to that, and maybe you can speak on that a little bit more on that point, because that was just so um, pivotal and in changing someone's pattern.
yeah. Because last year, well, not last year now, we're 2022 now, aren't we? It's 2020 that we kept hearing this theme, the new normal, we're gonna enter a new normal. And I saw
Yeah,
a little either a tweet or a post from someone I follow who was saying, "No, I'm not accepting, the new normal. I'm not going into a new normal." He was really being really negative about that term, and I can
yeah,
understand where he was coming from. And, he was thinking, "Well, this is being forced on us," and he wasn't gonna accept that, and I totally understand where he was coming from. But then on the other hand, this I thought, well, a new normal for someone could be that they're actually getting healthier. Like the pandemic made a certain
mhm,
section of the population really look at the state that their health was in, because we were hearing on the news that people with comorbidities were the ones who were dying, people with other health conditions were the ones who were ending up in hospital and dying. So some people were thinking, well, hang on, if I get my body fitter and healthier, then I could avoid being seriously ill, even if I do happen to catch this.
right,
And so, a lot of people actually themselves, just without thinking about this term new normal, they started a new normal. Some people started like I was thinking that I, here we were told that when we first had the lockdown in March 2020 in the UK, we were told you're allowed to go out once a day to exercise. And then we would see more people actually going out and exercising that we wouldn't normally see. And partly it's because the gyms closed down. These people would have been going to the gym otherwise. But I think
mhm,
some of these people were just going out for a walk because, well, there was nothing else to do anyway. They actually had the time to go out for a walk or something, or they were just wanted to go out and exercise because they were almost like because they were hearing, you are allowed to go out to exercise once a day. That could have almost just pushed them to say, yeah, I'll just go out and exercise then. Sometimes that can happen. And so a lot of people started a new normal, which was actually beneficial for them. It wasn't all like a negative thing, like having to have a new normal. For some
mm,
people, a lot of positive things happened. They decided maybe to actually get healthier and get fitter. We saw um, people that are saying, "Oh, they lost so X weight during the first lockdown. They decided to just focus on their health, and they were obese, and now they're not anymore. They're like much healthier and at a healthier weight, for example." And it made me realize that, not made me realize, but it made me think of the fact that we've all sort of had probably several times in our lives where we've started a new normal.
yeah,
Even when we've school and maybe go to university, you start a new thing that becomes normal maybe for 3 years whilst you're a student, because we do, like, 3-year degrees in the UK. I don't know how many years it is in the USA. And, when you leave university and you start your first job, and then you again start a new normal to an extent because it's a different life again. So we have these periods of time when we start new normals. There might not be like massive life changes, but we do kind of start new normals. And so I wanted to sort of write about how, a new normal needn't be a negative thing. A new normal could be something that you have decided. You choose what your new normal is, and you choose it because it's good for you. So, and that's
Yeah.
kind of what my blog post was about. Although I know I wrote it over a year ago, and I probably can't remember exactly what I wrote, but it was that
That's
kind of
okay.
idea. Mm.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback on that, and, um, what I try to encourage, like, my patients and people in general is what can we learn from things? So, like, obviously with COVID, like, some people, not all people, but some people did learn, "Hey, I
Mm.
need to take my health more seriously. I do need to exercise. Um, I need to eat better." Whatever it is, I need to take my health a little bit more seriously. Some people did that. For other
Mm.
individuals, like when something happens to them negatively against their health, because that's what I'm in, is the health field, is
Mm.
okay, what uh, not that something negative is good, because we know that's not from God, but we can also learn from that situation, and we can go back, and like we've been talking, the theme of gratitude, we can say, okay, well, what have I learned from this experience? What has changed in my life? And if someone has not taken that posture of that side of what is going on with them, I begin to help them to encourage them to do that, because that's what begins to shift for them. Okay, well, yeah,
Yeah.
before this condition, like, I didn't really care about what I was eating or what I was doing or how I was moving, and now, like, I know what I'm putting in my body, and sometimes that could be too extreme, but I know now,
Mhm.
things that are better for me, and so there's always something that you can kind of begin to shift in someone and say, "Okay, well, maybe if this hadn't happened to you, if you wouldn't have known that." Or you wouldn't have taken
Mm.
that into consideration. And that's just to feed on what you were saying and you wrote about, is that, yeah, there's this sense of control and manipulation that we're not agreeing with that normal of masking and all of that stuff. But there is the other facet
Mm.
of every change in what happens to our life. There's an open availability for adaptability for us, where we can take that and we can settle, or we can take that and we can improve and we can adapt and we can um, push that further into our own excellence and growth, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
all of that, all of that, I loved that quote. That quote, I'm going to say it again: nothing is permanent, only change is permanent. So if you're stuck in your life and you think something is permanent, it's not. Change is the thing that's permanent, because we are continually evolving and changing as we develop in our lives. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that was good. Okay, I have another question for you. Um, so if someone is kind of stuck, um, do you have something that you can kind of pull them into positivity quickly? Is that gratitude aspect? Or do you have something that you have found that can really switch them into that more optimism pull more efficiently?
If someone's stuck with, so you mean if they're stuck in negativity, not just generally if someone's stuck anywhere, they're
Yeah,
stuck in
like in their
negativity.
more of their mind, more of their thoughts.
Okay, so
Obviously,
if
every
someone
person.
gets stuck, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, with people being stuck in, say, with negative thoughts, firstly, I'd kind of need to elicit more of exactly what's going on and in what way they are stuck. Because some people feel that they don't have control over their thoughts. Some people actually say, well, the thoughts just happen. So, firstly, they
Mhm.
don't even realize that they do actually have power over their thoughts. So, even
Yeah.
letting someone know that thoughts don't actually have to happen to you. You do actually can have power over them. You can actually control them. Sometimes even that could be like a major thing that they
Mm,
realize, a major revelation for them, because they truly believe that their thoughts are happening and they can't do anything about it. Their thoughts are happening to them. And it can
yeah.
feel like that. But then you actually get told that, "Look, this is like it can be quite an empowering thing for them to just be told that actually you can control your thoughts. Your thoughts don't have to happen to you. You don't have to let them happen to you. You can actually stop them. You can actually control your thoughts because they're yours." You
Mhm.
can, like, decide to take ownership, and you can decide to say, like, "No, I'm not taking that thought." So, for some people, even just knowing that they actually can control their thoughts rather than the thoughts are just coming to them and, just falling in their heads, that can be a major thing. And for other people, I'm trying to think of just maybe, like, give an example. Maybe someone might be having these negative thoughts and they feel like they can't help going that way. It's because they are so used to it. It's like
Mhm.
that's so easy, and that is like the natural direction that they go towards. Again, sometimes at the beginning we really have to just almost put the effort and I don't really like to use the word force, but we do almost sometimes have to force ourselves. It's like when we've decided we want to exercise every day, for example. I find that sometimes I don't actually feel like doing, but I kind of have to make myself exercise. And I know that if I do exercise, then I'll later on in the day I'll feel happy looking back. And if I don't, then later on in the day I'll think, oh, I wish I had exercised because I do exercise in the morning. Well, I
Mhm.
do morning and I do a little bit later on in the day, but, if I one or 2 times, or actually more than 1 or 2 times, a few times, I have, like, given in to my feelings and, like, not exercised, and then later on I
Mm.
think, "Oh, I wish I had," and it wouldn't have been for long anyway, I wish I had. So sometimes that can help, just knowing, sort of almost seeing the future, like your future goal, and you think, "Well, I want to reach this particular goal." Like, even if it's something like, "Look, I don't want to have so many negative thoughts all the time. I want to be at least a bit more of a positive person, and sort of that will make me feel happier." You can think, "Well, look, I'm having this thought and I'm thinking that, oh, this is just how I naturally am, and this is how my mind goes, and it's
Mm.
hard for me to just force myself to have think more of the good things. But hey, if I do think more of the good things, I know I'm going to be grateful to myself. I'm going to be a happier person, and it might be hard now, but I just got to just do something that maybe I naturally don't want to do right now. And for some people, it
Mhm.
might be just make yourself think of, what good has happened in your life. And the good thing is, with the thought thing, you see the benefits straight away. Whereas compared to with the exercise thing, I might make myself, exercise, but I wouldn't necessarily see the benefits straight away. Because with exercise, it's a long
Mm.
term thing when you feel fitter, when you start to feel
Mm.
fitter, or whatever your goal is with exercise. But with the thought patterns, with the where you're directing your thoughts, if you're just feeling really low and really negative, and you just force yourself to think of something good, and then you keep, even if I don't like to use the word force, keep making yourself, think of what you're grateful for and what's gone good in your life, that can have immediate effect on you, because you're putting your focus on something good and something nice and beautiful or wonderful. You immediately have the benefits of it.
Yeah. Well, I think in general, individuals put a lot, especially in the health field, they put a lot of emphasis on, yeah, it does, like exercising is a great example. you do have to, for a period of time, force yourself until it becomes a
Mm,
habit. And then it's a habit, and now, okay, I may not feel those benefits at first, but now I'm really feeling the benefits because I've forced it into being a
mm,
habit. And anything that you do have to force at first because you're going against
mm,
an inherent pattern. uh,
mm,
and I think if individuals took that same principle with what are you feeding into your thoughts, as far as with gratitude is a beautiful example. If you begin to force that into a pattern, like you find in your work, you'll be surprised how quickly some of your things around your life begin to shift, and then how you physically feel begins to shift. So yeah, it is. You have to
yeah.
take the same amount of effort like you would working out, forcing. I can tell that personally from my own testimony. There was months where I had to go through, okay, I need to switch that toxic thought, and I need to switch it, and I need to switch it. And it took time, but now I can immediately connect when something goes into my mind. That's not my thoughts. So I'm going to switch that into
Mm.
something positive. Is our like positive affirmation something that you also practice yourself and with your clients as well? Is that something that you incorporate? Because you hear that a lot with
I
like stuff.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I personally, as far as affirmations, I like to use things in the Bible for sort of
Mhm.
affirmation. So I use things that I can say over myself that come from what the Bible, says about me,
Yeah.
and the things that I want to achieve, and things like that. So that's what I personally do. Affirmations is it's kind of a funny thing because some people find it just doesn't work for them,
Mhm.
and some people find it does. So it's one where, it might not necessarily work for everyone, and some people just it just some people are told. I've heard other people saying, look in the mirror and say these things to yourself, and I personally find that doesn't really work. Just looking in the mirror thing and saying it to yourself, that personally doesn't work for me. And yeah, so with affirmations, I'm a bit in, yeah, I think affirmations can be good. If they work for you, that's great. But I know that, some people are going to say they just don't work for me at all. But I personally, as a person of faith, I do like to use things in the Bible because, like, for me, that's the truth that I'm telling myself when I use,
Mhm.
take script and say what can be considered as affirmations.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much in
Yeah.
there that we have for ammo, you know? You just need to know where to find it
Mm,
and know how to
mm.
use it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, as we kind of near the end of our talk today, being implementer of positivity in your life, so we've got a little peek into your window of life as far as doing gratitude before bed. We know that you exercise um, as well, and we know that you fill your thoughts with scripture. Are there any other things like in your routine of daily that you maybe avoid, or other things that you implement to keep in a posture of positivity?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, one of these people who's always a positive person. I really have my low times as well, and I really am really aware that when I'm just sometimes I wake up and for some reason I notice in the morning I'm actually feeling low, and I'm thinking, and I can't even think of why. It doesn't seem to be any specific reason. But one
Mhm.
thing that I have do personally, and again, this goes back to my faith, that verse where it says, "Put on a garment of praise for a spirit of
Yeah,
heaviness." And
yeah,
that that's one thing that really worked for me as well, just putting on some worship music and really
yeah,
getting into praise and worship. That really can make quite a fast difference as well, not just a difference, but quite quickly as well sometimes. Like once I
mhm,
I just recall relatively recently, I was just feeling really down and really low, and I put on some worship music, and it happened to be one of these like really fast paced ones that it happened to be because I put on something on YouTube, and I was just singing along and dancing along to it, and I just noticed, wow, I just feel so much better. And it's the lyrics as well. It's not just because
Yeah.
it was fast-paced music and I was dancing. It is the actual lyrics. It is actual, like the truth being sort of
Mhm.
sung out in the worship. That really, I find that praise and worship songs really help because of the lyrics more than anything, because of like the truth that I'm speaking and hearing. That really helps.
Yeah,
And I really get the meaning of verse. I really have experienced the meaning of that verse, "Put on the garment of praise for a spirit of heaviness."
yeah, that's a beautiful verse for sure. Just a way,
Mm,
also just like singing and dancing, how that can relieve pressure off and get us into that different
mm,
mindset as well and into more joy versus heaviness. Absolutely.
mm,
Um, I think that was hard for some people the past couple of years because they had some of those outlets like dancing or
yeah,
singing or Um, the gym is one example, and then that was kind of taken away from them.
mm,
So they really had to
yeah,
start infiltrating, okay, what are other ways that I can still find gratitude and joy in that outlet that I no longer have at this time. And so I think that was
mm,
a lesson a lot of people had to learn too, is the importance of
yeah,
community, the importance of people around you, the importance of, like, things that we take for granted. So again, gratitude coming back, uh,
mm,
coming back to those things that we maybe did take for granted in that season, and now we're like, "Okay,
yeah,
I see that now."
yeah,
Um, yeah, well, oh my goodness, time has flew by. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you. I know it's late there in London, so thank you for taking your evening to chat with myself and my followers. Um, we just honor the work that you're doing. It's very hard to be positive in where we're at, but we just bless you and we speak prosperity into what you're doing. And again, we just thank you so much for your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really great. It's been fun.
Yeah, time flies.
Mm.
Well, how can people find you to learn more about you, maybe get, read your blog and get some of your resources? Can you shout out those resources?
Yeah, my website is, najmazaman.com, and I know you'll put it in the show notes, so I
Yeah, I
won't
will.
spell it out, it won't take long to spell it out. So that's my website, and, my Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook handles are Miss Najma Zaman. So they're
Beautiful.
all the same,
Do you s
yeah.
do you see people virtually? Are you mainly, like, one-on-one? How have you worked that? Just in case people wanna find you and maybe chat with you. Mhm. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty much how most people have shifted anyways, so wonderful. Well, again,
Yeah.
thank you. I will definitely put all of your links into the bio of our podcast today so that people can find more information. Thank you again, and we will chat with you guys next time, warriors. Have a great rest of your week.